At my son's wedding, I faced a shocking moment when his bride revealed my true self, but it took everything I had to hold on. Mike Thompson stood under the bright Midwestern sun, swallowed by a crowd of well-wishers, the scent of summer blooming all around. Today was supposed to be joyful, the culmination of Jake's love story with Sophie, a vibrant, ambitious young woman destined for greatness. But as Mike adjusted the cuffs of his neatly pressed shirt, an uneasy knot twisted in his stomach. His hands, accustomed to grease and rough work, felt out of place in the delicately crafted world of wedding ceremonies. For decades, he'd taken pride in his ability to fix cars, patch up broken engines, and help his son build a life. Yet here, in front of the gathered crowd, with eyes lingering on him, insecurities gnawed at him like rust on metal. They respected him for his hard work, but did they really know him? Sophie's radiant smile only deepened Mike's anguish. He knew she loved Jake, and part of him was grateful that he could give his son this fresh start. But as the whispered compliments flowed through the guests, Mike felt unseen, a ghost in the very life he'd worked so hard to create. Just moments before she was to say "I do," Sophie stood up abruptly, drawing everyone's attention away from the couple. Beneath that piercing spotlight, Mike's heart raced. What was she doing? The crowd murmured, their gazes shifting toward him, their whispers now laced with curiosity. And then she spoke. "I want to share something about Mike," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "You all know him as Jake's father, the hard-working mechanic. But what you don't know is that he had dreams, dreams of being an engineer, dreams stifled by life's relentless trials." The air thickened and gasps rippled through the crowd. Mike's throat tightened, his past shaped by responsibility hung heavy between them. The murmurs turned to laughter, but it felt mocking, a judgment laid bare. What did they know about the sacrifices he had made? Who cared about his dreams now that they had been dredged up like a skeleton? Before he could catch his breath, Sophie continued, her passion infectious, yet his apprehension deepened further. She debated merit versus privilege as if igniting a conversation only the sharpest of minds would understand. His heart ached at her defense of him. It ignited a flame within him and yet burned with the pain of exposure. Questions pulsed through his mind, drowning out the sound of voices around him. Could he reclaim those ambitions he'd shelved? Was it too late for the man he wanted to be? The internal turmoil twisted like a wrench tightening inside his chest. As he scanned the guests, faces that once looked up to him now revealed a mixture of confusion and awe. Did they see a man grinding through life, or one too afraid to chase his own dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes of system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clock ticks louder in his mind, and yet he feels immobilized, a wrench in the gears of his own life. Each turn of the conversation pushed him deeper into an abyss of self-doubt. What started as a celebration morphed into a reckoning. Will the community demand he reconcile this newfound vulnerability with the man they once believed he was? Just as Mike began to recoil from the weight of expectations, Jake's warm nudge at his side broke through the haze. His son's reassuring smile ignited a flicker of hope amidst the turmoil. But there, as Sophie prepared to embrace the vows, shadows lingered in the corners of Mike's mind. Would family loyalty hold through the transformation? Could he gather the courage to pursue his abandoned dreams, or was he chained to the life he had lived for too long? As they closed in on the vows, the tension built, echoing unanswered questions. Would he emerge from today defined or forever caught in the web of unacknowledged potential? The vows echoed in the air like a siren song, but Mike felt far removed from the melody. The weight of Sophie's revelation reverberated within him, clashing with the joyous vows exchanged only feet away. He was in a place where celebration clashed harshly with his burgeoning self-awareness, and he felt exposed, laid bare before the world in a way he never anticipated. As the ceremony continued, he couldn't shake the nagging questions that festered in his mind. The community looked to him as a figure of stability, but they had no inkling of the dreams he tamed each day, pulling him further into life's demanding embrace. Did they see success in his tired eyes, or simply a man who had given up? Jake's laughter broke through the haze, a bright note in an otherwise tumultuous symphony. His son was the embodiment of everything Mike had ever hoped for, a strong, confident man ready to chase after his future, unmarred by the weight of unrealized ambitions. The juxtaposition struck him deep. He could either remain a passive spectator in his son's life or step forward and claim a piece of his own future. The ceremony unfolded gradually, like a dream soured by untamed thoughts. When it was over, guests poured into the reception hall, laughter echoing through spacious walls, while Mike stood at the threshold, a relic of the past hesitating at the door. He watched as couples danced and filled glasses in celebration. Each clink rang like a reminder of choices he'd let slip through his fingers. What if Elisipro truly ventured into this new territory, only to find himself exposed and inadequate? Just then, Lisa, the bride, approached, sharing her own ambitions in engineering, moments of insight threading between them. Mike's heart raced. This connection to a life he thought had slipped through his fingers felt real, igniting hope. Their camaraderie was a stark reminder of the thriving community they both sought to ignite in their respective careers. But even as excitement began to bubble within him, a quiet whisper of self-doubt emerged, questioning the practicality of venturing beyond a comfortable existence. What if he couldn't achieve the success others seemed to see in him? What if he ventured into this unknown path only to fumble in the face of expectations? Still, the thrill of potential loomed over him like a beckoning star. Faced with the recognition of his own emotions and capabilities, he understood now that this was more than just a push toward academics. It was a test of faith in himself and the worthiness of his aspirations. He turned back to the spirited celebration before him, the laughter echoing loudly, each note taunting and comforting. It was no longer just about Jake or the legacy of dreams physicalized in him. It became about forging a new beginning for Mike himself. Just as he prepared to share his newfound resolve, a pitfall emerged. The last drink he'd consumed danced in him uneasily, muddling his clarity. He could either voice these plans of goal and ambition or cling to the comfort of imagined security. In that moment, Mike had to confront a crucial question. How much would he be willing to risk to pursue the life he genuinely desired? Would he step into the unknown with unwavering courage, or would he let self-doubt steer him back into the shadows? The dance floor sparkled with light, yet beneath it, darkness loomed, waiting for his decision. The world around them buzzing with excitement as he stood at the brink of transformation, poised to embrace or abandon possibility. With a heart heavy with expectation, he took a step toward the man he wished to become. But as he prepared to voice his intentions, a familiar figure caught his eye from the other end of the hall, one that would upend everything he thought he was prepared to address.
The figure approaching was a ghost from the past, a reminder of who Mike had been rather than who he wanted to become. Mark, an old college friend and a brilliant engineer, radiated charisma, confidence practically spilling from him with every step. Mike's heart sank. Memories of old ambitions surfaced unbidden, a flood of shame filling him at the sight of a man who had climbed the ladder of their shared dreams, while Mike had become mired in complacency. "Mike, it's been ages," Mark exclaimed, his voice a blend of warmth and joviality, drawing close enough to break through Mike's reverie. "I saw you at the bar and had to come say hi."
Heard rumors that you're thinking of going back to school. That's fantastic. Are you ready for the grind? What Mike felt wasn't just nostalgia, but a surge of competitive instinct ignited by that very question. The words hung in the air, prompting self-reflection. Terry's exuberance loomed large, a challenge laid before him. Was he genuinely ready? Could he follow through and actually transform his life instead of merely entertaining the idea? Before he could respond, a captivating and supportive atmosphere enveloped him. "It's never too late, man. I took the plunge at 30. It's challenging, but the satisfaction? Totally worth it." Mark's enthusiasm was infectious, but it also drew out the specter of inadequacy within Mike. "Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot," Mike replied, struggling to not reveal the conflict brewing just beneath the surface. Each second with Mark reignited questioning shadows that he thought he had started to conquer. Could he recreate the spark he felt while pursuing his past ambitions, or had that part of him been extinguished? As the two men chatted, waves of admiration crashed over Mike. Mark's accomplishments were in contrast to Mike's default mode of blending into the background. As the conversation continued, Mike's hesitations cautiously transformed into resolve. This was not merely a social exchange. It was an unforeseen catalyst that crystallized his intentions, yet also magnified all that he had not yet achieved. "My job's all about collaboration now. You'd love the process of masterminding innovative solutions," Mark said, his eyes glinting with passion. Mike detected an inferno that he used to know well. "You're resourceful, Mike. I have no doubt you'll fit right in. You just need to seize it." In that brief lapse of ego, Mike felt both uplifted and overwhelmed. An unexpected thread connected them, reminiscent of a simpler time. It accosted him with clarity. If he was going to pull himself from the quicksand of mediocrity, he needed to take that leap, but doubt continued to gnaw at him. "Maybe it's not that easy," he countered, ironically sounding as if he wished to silence the voice that had just liberated him. "What if I can't handle it? What if I fail? What if it's easier to remain in the shadow, safe?" Mark's expression shifted to earnestness. "Isn't the real failure never trying? You don't want to be looking back with regret." His words ignited fuel in Mike's heart, yet reactionary self-doubt re-entered, smothering the newfound fire. It felt as if the walls were closing in with the weight of his unsubstantiated fears. How many failures could he justify before labeling himself a lost cause? The inner turmoil threatened to drown out the confident persona he had begun to project. Jake, who had been mingling in the back, caught sight of his father and moved forward, confusion mirrored in his eyes. "Dad, what's going on? You look overwhelmed." Mike tore his gaze from Mark, torn between two narratives at play. He was no longer just a father, but a man wrestling with the discovery of new potential, registering how truly vulnerable he felt amidst the forces around him. Jake's genuine concern was a stark reminder of his responsibility. How would Mike reconcile his aspirations to be a role model, the embodiment of pursuit and fortitude, with the reality of his wavering spirit? As he stood there, caught in a web of expectation, yearning to voice his ambitions but shackled by indecision, Mike's resolve rippled like a live wire within him. The vibrant laughter around them dulled, replaced by a haunting silence echoing with unarticulated fears that seldom saw the light of day. Mike had reached a juncture where he could either embrace a new identity or retreat into familiar shadows, a choice looming like a storm cloud on the horizon. Just as he opened his mouth to respond to the unrelenting call of destiny, another figure from his past seeped into his consciousness, holding the keys to his long-forsaken ambitions. In that moment, the decision crystallized. Was he ready to confront his past, at last unmasking the true man beneath the layers of self-doubt? The air felt thick with anticipation as Mike struggled to articulate his thoughts. He could feel the weight of his past pressing heavily on him, the nostalgia and shame a relentless reminder of the dreams he once had. The vague outline of new ambitions stirred within him, fluttering like a bird desperate to take flight, but he lacked the courage to open the cage. As the conversation between him and Mark continued, Mike's mind became a battlefield. Each compliment from Mark was a call to arms, an invitation to reclaim the aspirations pushed aside in favor of complacency. Yet, for every flicker of hope ignited by Mark's words, an embattled voice within him countered, urging caution. "Mike, you've got the skills," Mark offered reassuringly, misreading the brewing storm behind Mike's eyes. "You just need to trust in them. Remember our late nights studying together? You've always been creative and resourceful." The memory washed over Mike like a flood, pulling him back to the youthful exuberance that once fueled his dreams. He could see themselves hunched over textbooks, laughter punctuating the seriousness of their ambitions. But that was then. What was he now? "Sure, I can talk a good game," he replied, attempting to match Mark's confidence with half-hearted bravado. The unspoken word failure hovered between them, hovering like a specter. Mike clenched his fists, grounding himself as he sensed the judgment may come. Mark looked as if he might counter with a pep talk, but a momentary shadow crossed his face. He must have sensed Mike's reluctance. "Listen," Mark said, his tone shifting to a more serious pitch. "You'll never know what's waiting for you on the other side unless you take the leap. If going back to school is what you need, then do it. I believe in you." Mike felt a mix of emotions swirling within him: appreciation for Mark's faith, frustration at his own inaction, and envy of the life Mark seemed to have effortlessly crafted. Each moment they shared magnified his stagnation, stinging like salt in a fresh wound. Meanwhile, Jake stood to the side, trying to engage with the energy of the room while still concerning himself with his father. Mike turned towards him, that simple gaze from his son piercing through the dense fog of self-doubt. Here was someone who believed in him no matter his track record. Even at his worst, Jake exemplified acceptance, a stark contrast to the expectations weighing on Mike's shoulders. "Dad, everything okay?" Jake's question was laced with genuine concern, cutting through the noise of the crowd. Mike took a deep breath, sensing a decisive hourglass slipping away. This was not merely about him anymore. It was about Jake and the kind of example he wanted to set. Did he want his son to see him as a figure limited by fear, or one who pursued his dreams against all odds? I think I need to make a change," he finally said, the words tumbling out heavier than he expected. The implications in his statement rippled through him, stirring a powerful mix of fear and exhilaration. Mark beamed. "That's what I'm talking about.
You've got it in you. You just need to harness that energy. With the crowd bustling around them, Mike felt tethered to the unfolding reality. This was a moment of reckoning where dreams and hesitations collided. The revelation of his own potential, however terrifying, felt liberating. Stepping away from complacency meant confronting both the expectations of the world and those he set upon himself. He glanced at Jake, who grinned back, his eyes bright with encouragement. In that moment of connection between father and son, Mike's heart began to quicken with a sense of purpose that had long been dormant. Could he truly dive into the uncertainty of a path untraveled? Just as clarity began to settle, an unfamiliar figure emerged at the edge of the gathering, a woman he once knew well, her presence promising to disturb the surface of his newfound resolve. Memories tied to her surged within him, echoing both promises and regrets that could unravel this fragile thread of determination he was starting to weave. Uncertainty suddenly solidified, the air around them thickening with impending revelations. Was Mike ready to face not just his past ambitions, but the life he had built around them? As she approached, ready to challenge his evolving identity, Mike felt the winds of change whip around him, volatile as ever. It was time to confront not only what lay ahead, but the truths he had buried deep within himself. Mike's heart raced as the woman drew near.
Guia de estilo e instruções para síntese de fala. Contexto de continuidade. A frase anterior era elf. Mike's heart raced as the woman drew near. His familiar silhouette began to resurrect moments he had attempted to bury. Laughter, dreams shared, and ultimately the crushing disappointment that had seen them part ways. Sarah's hair gleamed like it once did in sunlight, an evocative reminder of the past he both embraced and resisted. "Mike," she greeted, voice smooth yet edged with uncertainty. The weight of those syllables struck him. Somehow they unearthed fragments of the man he used to be, wrapped in ambition and independence, now marred by self-doubt and routine. "Sarah," he returned, his tone barely above a whisper. The tumult within him surged. Here stood the possibility of confrontation, an oportunidade de reconciliar fragmentos de sua história while holding tightly to the blossoming resolve forged just moments before. Yet the specter of his insecurities loomed large. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, her gaze flickering past him to the celebration behind. "How have you been?" He considered how to answer. How had he been? Words struggled to form. He wrestled with the history that swelled between them. A safe response felt inadequate. I've been working." Pathetic, mere survival masquerading as existencia. He could feel Jake's attentive eyes studying the exchange, and just like that, he realized what was at stake. "Working hard?" she probed, an encouraging smile breaking her facade. Mike's discomfort hovered perilously. Could he reveal the self-doubts he had wrested from his mind, or would he resort to self-deprecation? "Hard enough to know I need to make some changes," he admitted, each word gilded with a revealing vulnerability. He looked at her, willing her to catch on to the sincerity of his declaration. To his surprise, her brows knitted together, an expression of empathy. "We all do sometimes, right? I mean, when was the last time you actually pursued what you love?" The question rattled him, a mirror reflecting the disparidade entre suas aspirações e realidade. Could he conjure the courage to admit the true depth of his yearning? "I've been trapped by fear," he confessed, the barrier around his emotions fracturing. Fear of failing again, fear of what others will think. So I stayed silent and still.
As the last syllables left his mouth, he glimpsed Jake's expression morph from worry to understanding. The realization washed over him. His son didn't only witness a father shaped by regret. He observed an individual grappling with deep-seated fears and a father trying to become something greater. "Oh, Mike," Sarah said, genuine concern bleeding through her words. "You've always had so much potential. Why not go for it?" Her encorajamento alejou êmbolos de esperança ardem firmes dentro dele, ignando antigas ambições que havia sufocado. Talvez os medos que o devoraram pudessem ser vencidos, transformados em degraus em vez de estropeços. Mas assim como começava a sentir invencível, senso de urgência drapou sobre ele.
What if stepping forward meant confronting not only his ambitions, but the unresolved messiness Karen had left behind? The implications began to seep through the cracks of self-discovery. Perhaps it was time to face what had always haunted him, the unraveling of relationships, the scars etched into his identity. As Mike caught the glimmer in Sarah's eyes, he realized vulnerability was less about admitting defeat and more about embracing growth. It opened doors to both potential and peril. In that moment, weighted yet light, he made a silent promise to himself. He would no longer allow fears or past mistakes to box him in. But just as resolute gears seemed to click into place, a piercing laugh resonated from behind. The horde of guests turned, calling attention away from their contained circle. Jake's eyes flickered between Mike and the growing celebration, asking silently if his father was ready to take action. Another feeling welled within him, an urgency to forge a new path, not just for himself, but as a compass for Jake. Every ounce of hesitation battled with a fresh flame of ambition, redefining both what it meant to confront and embrace. Would he sign up for the unknown and commit to reshaping his reality? Before he could answer his son's unspoken question, he felt a weight nearby shift and knew without turning that another challenge awaited him. People from his past ready to stoke both doubts and potentials. Would he be ready to navigate this uncharted territory? The moment hung in the air. A decision loomed large, echoing through the fabric of his evolving identity. Mike's mind spun as he stood on the precipice of transformation, acutely aware of the watchful eyes around him. He could feel fear creeping back in, a familiar specter threatening to drown out the fresh resolve ignited by his raw exchange with Sarah. The laughter that punctured the evening air reminded him of the social entanglements he had long avoided, associating them with disappointment. This was not merely a gathering, it was a judgment, exposing every wrinkle in his carefully constructed facade. He turned slightly toward Jake, searching for reassurance in his son's expression. Yet he saw only eagerness tempered with curiosity, a boy waiting for his father to unveil the man he was meant to be. The paternal instinct roared within Mike. He knew he couldn't falter now. It wasn't just his life that hung in the balance. Jake was counting on him to rise above mediocrity. Suddenly, he felt an unexpected tug at his sleeve. A familiar figure emerged from the fabric of his past. Tom, an old colleague with a penchant for dissecting every shortcoming, now encroached upon the moment Mike most needed clarity. "Mike, how've you been?" Tom's enthusiasm felt more invasive than comforting. The man always had a tendency to exaggerate everything. Triumphs that came easily to him, failures flavored with disdain for the fallen. Mike braced himself, knowing this wasn't merely casual conversation, it was an assessment. "Been working on a few things," Mike replied cautiously, navigating the tension coiling around his words. He tried to project confidence, channeling the energy sparked by his earlier interaction with Sarah. "Let me know when you get somewhere worth talking about," Tom quipped, a glint of amusement evident in his eyes. The insinuation twisted like a knife. It presented an opportunity, a chance to either retreat into self-doubt or to assert himself firmly within the framework of his redefined identity. Mike's hand clenched reflexively at his side. It was then that he recognized the battle within him, the clash between acceptance and resistance shaped by years of feeling inadequate. Staying silent would mean acquiescing to the stereotypes, the limitations that others had placed on him, not to mention the ones he had embraced himself. "No," he said loudly, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "I've been discovering what it's like to pursue my passions again." The words breathed life into a resolve that flickered before being restrained. "This is more than just work for me now." Tom's brow arched in surprise, the shift in dynamics palpable. "Really? When did you become an artist?" The skepticism mirrored in Tom's voice sparked an involuntary urge to retreat. "In my own way, I always have been," Mike countered defiantly, feeling the rush of purpose surge within him. His past failures no longer defined him. Instead, they became stepping stones towards the father he wished to be for Jake, the man who could embrace potential and possibility. Around him, laughter flowed, moments of lightness spun together that contrasted with the seriousness of his revelation. He took a step closer to Jake, the warmth of pride filling the void where self-doubt lingered. "I realize now that hiding from challenges doesn't serve any of us." At that juncture, something new stirred within him, a dual commitment not only to his own growth, but to being a model of resilience for Jake, reinforcing the necessity of facing one's fears head-on. As the night continued, the vibe shifted, light threads of hope weaving their way into the fabric of his reality. Mike began scanning the crowd, contemplating the good he might uncover in reconnecting with old acquaintances, and perhaps even challenging their perceptions of him. But just as he felt the momentum building, he noticed Karen across the room. The sight of her nearly sent him reeling back into the shadows of his own mind. Jake turned to follow his father's gaze, sensing the sudden tension. There she stood, an embodiment of unresolved conflict, an anchor tied to his past insecurities. Mike's breath hitched. This was it, the moment where he would either stand his ground or spiral back into the unfulfilled man he once was. The next decision could redefine everything, not just for him, but for his son. The weight of the moment pulsated like a heartbeat, asking him if he was finally ready to confront the specter of disappointment that had trailed him through the years. Would he be strong enough to face this unexpected challenge? Or would he falter again, retreating from the very growth he had begun to embrace? The air thickened, the world around him fading as the weight of his choice pressed down, swelling with anxiety and promise. Karen's gaze locked onto Mike, a jolt passing between them that felt electric yet turbulent. He could see the remnants of their past reflected in her expression. Conflict surged within him, wrestling against the newfound resolve he attempted to wield. In that moment, she was not just a reminder of his faltering past. She was a challenge, an opportunity. "Dad," Jake's voice broke through the swelling turmoil. The look of concern in his son's eyes grounded Mike, pulling him back from the brink of retreat. Jake was waiting for him to respond, to take action. The expectation in his son's gaze was both terrifying and empowering. Mike realized this moment didn't just belong to him, it belonged to his son as well. With a deep breath, he anchored himself in the present, forcing the noise of self-doubt to recede. Mike stepped towards Karen, each stride heavy with implications of a conversation long overdue. Every ounce of his hesitation battled against a fierce desire to reclaim his narrative, not just for himself, but as a model for Jake. "Karen," he started, voice taut with unspoken words. The crowd fell away, the music dulled, leaving them in a pocket of silence where only anticipation thrummed. "It's been a while." The quirk of her lips could have been a smile, but it felt more like the bones of a forgotten argument cracking under the pressure of history. "I wasn't expecting to see you here," she said, an edge lacing her tone. "Neither was I," Mike replied, feeling the weight of each syllable. "But it's time for me to be honest with you and with myself." Jake's presence solidified his resolve. He wanted to show his boy that confronting challenging situations head-on was more than just a lesson, it was a necessity. Each step forward felt shaky, but the resolve surged. "Karen, our history defines part of who I am, but it doesn't have to dictate my future. I'm trying to redefine what that is." Karen's eyes flickered with a blend of surprise and guarded curiosity. "Are you really doing that, Mike, or just saying what sounds good?" The challenge stung, but instead of retreating, a fire ignited within him. Action speaks louder than words, doesn't it? I'm not here to dwell on past mistakes or failures. I'm here to build a future with Jake, whatever that looks like. And part of that is facing my past, not running from it. He could see her mind processing each word, defenses wavering ever so slightly. He pressed forward. "I want you to see the man I'm trying to become." Guia de estilo e instruções para síntese de fala. Você é narrador, palestrante com voz potente, forte e autoritária. O tom deve ser firme e inabalável. Contexto de continuidade. A frase anterior era: "I want you to see the man I'm trying to become." The tension between them shifted, becoming less like a fight and more like the space required for honest dialogue. "I want us to coexist without the weight of past decisions looming over us. For Jake's sake, can we talk about this? Really talk." Karen's face softened, a flicker of vulnerability peeking through. Mike's heart raced with the prospect of change. This was the confrontation he had feared, but his words were infused with hope rather than bitterness. It could be the moment that re-architected their relationship, shaped by their shared commitment to Jake's well-being. Just then, Jake interrupted, breaking the trance-like state, his eyes wide. "Dad, are you sure? I never want you to feel pressured to talk to her if you don't want to." Mike looked down at his son, recognizing a reflection of himself in that hesitance. "It's okay, Jake. I'm ready to confront what's been haunting me, and I want to show you that it's okay to face your fears." As the words left his mouth, a small gasp from the crowd caught his attention. He turned slightly to find several familiar faces staring, revealing a wider web of implications spiraling from his admission. Their expressions spoke of intrigue mixed with judgment, of expectations that might not align with his metamorphosis. What Mike had intended as an intimate moment had somehow given rise to a spectacle, an unwelcome audience to his personal evolution.
Panic flushed through him. Was he truly ready for this kind of vulnerability? The collective gaze only amplified the stakes. Would he be able to hold firm against the external pressures while navigating the minefield of his past with Karen and the expectations soon to fall upon them? The next breath felt monumental as he stood on the edge of more than just a conversation. "I think we need to do this," he declared again, louder, with more conviction, yet aware that this was only a chapter beginning to unfold. But the eyes of the gathered crowd remained, glimmers of doubt and support mingling with the truth he now clutched bravely in his hands. A storm was brewing, and he hadn't yet figured out how to navigate the currents of this very public reckoning. Was he truly prepared for this journey with both Jake and Karen? Or had he stepped into a confrontation that would reveal more than he'd bargained for? In that moment of truth, he felt the world tilt, poised between the path he wanted to forge and the chaos that could redefine them all. The eyes hung thick with anticipation, a charged silence enveloping Mike as he held Karen's gaze. Each second stretched infinitely, as if the universe itself dared him to take the next step. He could feel the weight of their shared history threatening to entangle him, to drag him back into the shadows of self-doubt. His heart pounded, the rhythm echoing his resolve, a silent mantra urging him not to flinch.
"Want us to have a conversation," he reiterated, his voice steadier now, a determined ember against the tide of old fears. The crowd bore down on him like spectators at a gladiatorial arena, but within that din, Mike sought clarity. "I need you to understand that I'm committed to being a better father and to learning how to communicate with you, Karen." Her expression softened, but Mike could sense the flurry of emotions brewing beneath the surface. This was her battlefield, too. "What does that even mean, Mike?" she replied, crossing her arms as if defending against an invisible attack. "Better fathers don't just emerge from oblivion. What have you truly done to earn that title?" Her words stung, but rather than recoil, Mike embraced the discomfort. "I've been working on myself, attending therapy." The admission hung between them, newly forged in honesty. "I'm learning how to navigate my insecurities, understand my shortcomings. I've realized I was running from my responsibilities, but I'm done being afraid. It's time to face the truths that haunt me." For a moment, Karen fell silent, processing what he had dared to reveal. This wasn't the typical Mike. This was an almost unrecognizable version of him. Beneath the surface of his fear and vulnerability was a burgeoning sense of self-worth that weeded out the systemic patterns he had lived by. "I've always wanted Jake to have both of us participate in his life," he continued, hopeful that their shared love for their son would serve as a bridge. "But I need you to believe that I mean it this time. I'm done making promises I can't keep." Karen's defensive posture wavered slightly, her eyes locking onto his, searching for any trace of deceit. "And what if you fall back?" she challenged, momentarily walking the line between skepticism and curiosity. "Then I'll fall." He held her gaze firmly, unyieldingly. "What's important is that I try, Karen. I'm not asking you to trust me right away, but I need a chance to prove that I can change." In that exchange, Mike found himself embracing an unfamiliar sensation, hope intermingled with trepidation. As they exchanged views, the unspoken weight of their shared past began to slowly lift. He felt a new strength rippling through him, reaffirming his capability to evolve. This wasn't just for him or for Jake. It was about transforming the narrative of his life.
"Maybe," she finally replied, her guarded tone softening. "We can start small. This conversation, for instance. It's a step." "Absolutely," Mike replied, the flutter of relief within him coiling around a new determination. Their dialogue felt like tentative footsteps on unfamiliar ground, each step a careful negotiation of boundaries and shared experiences. The crowd's presence remained an echo in the backdrop, but Mike focused on what mattered, the possibility of rebuilding something fractured, for Jake, for themselves. "Hey, Dad." As the night deepened and the party swirled around him, every interaction became amplification for the change Mike had begun to embody. Conversations interspersed with laughter began to turn toward dreams anew. Friends he once felt overshadowed by now likely saw a peer willing to rise, to skillfully navigate obstacles that had once defined him. Conversations about engineering blended with laughter about life itself, creating an ambiance that encapsulated hope and possibility. When the music swelled and the dance floor beckoned, he strode confidently to join the gathering, taking advantage of every beat to celebrate more than just his son's wedding. It was a celebration of resurrection, the defining of new paths illuminated by the joy of those he cherished. Each spin and step, every infectious laugh mingled with cherished love. He found liberation. As midnight approached, Mike took a moment to survey the room, witnessing joy radiating from familiar faces among the celebrations. Here stood a man who had once felt lost in obscurity, now basking in the warmth of recognition, not solely as Jake's father, but as Mike, fully embodied in his determination to forge a new legacy. It culminated in a crescendo of realization. He understood that transformation wasn't just a solitary journey. It echoed within every action, woven deep into the fabric of family. His commitment to his dreams reflected on how he would parent Jake, polishing vulnerabilities to insights, stepping into the arena of life's challenges, and urging his son towards the limitless potential awaiting him. Eager anticipation coursed through him like electric energy as Jake made his way back through the crowd, Sophie trailing close behind. Mike leaned down. "What did you tell her?" Jake's eyes shone. "I told her about you going back to school. I think she's excited too." In that singular moment, Mike felt surging realization encompass him. With each passing day, their lives unfolded, pruned from regret, and nourished by the determination to fully live, to embrace ambition and vulnerability with equal measure. Each step he took alongside Jake and Karen became both a recognition of the past and a solid foundation for a fulfilling future. With Jake beside him, they both made strides forward into the light, stepping explicitly into a new chapter defined by growth, courage, and the enduring flame of hope. No longer a figure fading into the backdrop, but a man claiming his place with undeniable strength and unguarded potential. Now was the time, a dawning horizon filled with promise. He exhaled deeply, finally allowing himself to bask in the glow of transformation, a fulfilled identity no longer on pause, but woven into the moments of each day. This was the message he wanted to reinforce to Jake, the notion that every ending brings forth new beginnings, a cycle of growth that spurs them onward.